So this is, first what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to do it a little bit nicer this time. Let's try to do it and do it in a sense that makes it easier to translate to code. All right? So let's think about it more in like a pseudocode type sense. We know where to have the array. We know we're going to look on either side, and we know we're going to do this, so let's do this, a little bit better. So if we think about it, we could have a function that has search that takes an array, and maybe it has a low and it has a high. This is the space in which you need to look into, right? That makes sense. And what we could do is we could do a loop until some sort of condition happens, right? What would be a good condition that would happen? Does anybody have an idea comparing to the lower, when the low and the high effectively become each other, we are done, right? Because that means we have their space to the point where we can no longer have our space. So it's a good thing to kind of remember the conditions always, but let's just walk over this in a more practical sense. So if we start here, what we need to do is we need to go from our low, and then we're going to go to our high, and then we're going to find a middle point. So we're going to write some pseudocode, and the midpoint, we're going to simply be the low plus high minus low divided by 2 and the floor of that operation, right? So that makes sense. We're right in the middle point, because if we're starting from a middle position, we're going to need to make sure that we adjust where we're at. That's why we do the low plus. And then we just have to look at a specific splice. So we get the midpoint with the offset. Awesome, we're good to go. So then we need the value at that point. So we can do something like array midpoint. And so we now have the value. All right, awesome. So what do we do in our 3 conditions? Does anybody know what the 3 conditions are? Condition 1. Value is the thing we're looking for. I forgot to put this in here. We'll just call it N for needle. There we go. If value equals needle, well, we can return true. In this case, we'll just make it simple. We're just going to return true. We found the value. It does exist. Here we go. We can return the index if we wanted to, which would just be simply that right there. Doesn't matter. All right. Or we have our value, which is actually larger than the midpoint. So what does that mean? We're looking at this position right here. And what that means is our value is larger than this position.